I obviously think eating disorders are terrible. I mean, I think it just stems from low confidence and insecurity.
I feel like people engage in eating disorders because when you don't eat as much, you become skinnier. And people like the idea of becoming skinny because of how the media publicizes it and makes it look like it's cool to be skinny and how skinny people are always pretty.
A lot of eating disorders are a cause of our media and advertising these days. Many companies like to advertise a perfect body or like a perfect image for oneself, and a lot of people feel like they have to attain this image to be accepted in the world.
Well, I think eating disorders are caused by multiple factors, and all those factors aren't immediately obvious.
Someone who's perhaps in a culture where food becomes and eating and body image become kind of the focus, kind of their self-esteem.
Recently, we've learned that the biggest contributing factor to developing an eating disorder happens to be genetics, which was surprising to us.
I've always been a type A personality, perfectionism, like everything in school has to be perfect.
Like a lot of girls that I'm friends with that are like a size 0 and that weigh like 110 pounds that like look gorgeous are like, oh my god, my thighs are so like flabby and like, oh, I'm so out of shape and I'm so fat. And it's like when you're so much like bigger than them, then it makes you feel really insecure.
I had the feeling that I wasn't ever perfect enough, and then I also did gymnastics, and then when I had to quit because I hurt my wrist, I would still like eat the same things but obviously not work out as much.
They're devastating to the people who are suffering from them. They're devastating to families.
And it's just a constant battle in my head about recovery versus staying sick.
They cling to their eating disorder. They use it like a cloak that protects them from the rest of the world, but really it's a cage.
I mean, my mom had to drop everything. She couldn't like go out and see her friends.
It affected my school a lot because I wouldn't have any energy and I would fall asleep like right when I came home from cheer.
There's a variety of different treatment options. I think when I treat people in my practice, I tend to see people more frequently when they have eating disorders, so I might see them anywhere from 2 to 4 sessions a week, especially when they're in sort of a crisis stage.
Treatment of anorexia is complex and interdisciplinary, so the very most important thing and what's different than any other psychiatric illness is that first we have to reestablish normal nutrition.
I've been through IOP, PHP, and residential, and I've kind of gone back and forth between all of those depending on insurance and depending on my parents and depending on whether I want to get better or not.
There's this app called, I think, just like recovery, like eating disorder recovery, and it has like a feelings log and like a food log and everything like all in one.
I was starting to model. I'd done a couple photo shoots. I walked in a couple shows, and I mean, I guess just knowing that I could never do that again is like the hardest part for me, because the second I was diagnosed, I'm like, Mom, I can't believe that I messed up my chance of being a model. And she's like, you didn't, but I did. Because I talked to the heads of the agency I was going to join, and they said, we can't take you, you're anorexic, no one will hire you. And I'm like, wow, okay. So that's just kind of, it was my dream, but it's over now. And I mean, New York Fashion Week is going on, and this would have been my first season. So I guess knowing that I can never be a model is probably the hardest part. And it still bothers me, even after a year. So.
Bullying can have a big impact on a child's self-esteem, and any kind of traumatic abuse can change the way you think about yourself.
Especially amongst adolescents, people that are in high school or in junior high, because there can be it can create some peer pressure to meet a certain ideal around body shape, whether it's weight or having a certain type of body. And the bullying can create a really competitive aspect where young women and sometimes young men feel like they have to keep up with each other or compete with each other, and those that are unable to have a certain body or a certain weight are often criticized or ridiculed, and that will motivate people not only to lose weight but to go too far with it.
If you have disordered eating, you're more likely to develop extremes in weight, although you don't always do so. So the higher your weight is, the more likely you are to have trouble with binge eating or compulsive overeating.
My eating habits were pretty awful. I tended to overindulge too much. I tend to be kind of a mindless overeater. I got to the point where my doctor tried to put me on a cholesterol pill, and as a 33-year-old, I thought I didn't want to take medication. My family has a history of diabetes and heart problems. I also just felt kind of lumpy and gross, and I think I just sort of hit a wall. I do think back now and I see that some compliments were backhanded. People have called me Rubenesque, which is a really nerdy and interesting way of calling someone fat. I try to eat clean, which means I eat natural products. I try to eat nothing that's made with chemicals. In terms of exercise, I try to find balance between weight training, strength training, but also cardio.
One thing is get treatment, get complete treatment. Don't mess around.
And try to, I think, not judge them, try not to sort of control their behavior or their eating. That usually never works.
You shouldn't think that it's not really bad, and you should tell someone as soon as you think that you have it.
Stew in what you missed and what you've given up for the eating disorder. Kind of like birthdays, Thanksgiving, times that you haven't been able to eat.
Take it seriously. You know, eating disorders have a high death rate, but they also have a high rate of really interfering with a person's ability to function, attend school, have successful relationships.
Make sure that you don't give up, and that you need to know that even though you might hate your parents and hate your doctors and hate your therapists for trying to make you gain weight and make you think differently, you need to remember that they're always just there for you, and your parents love you, and there's a reason they're doing this to you. They're not feeding you this much to hurt you. They're doing it because they want to save your life.